Hey, fair warning, this video is made for Undertale's 10th anniversary, and thusly I will not be explaining much about Undertale or Deltarune, except for really how those games make me feel. So it's a video only really worth watching if you've already experienced those two games, which you should absolutely do. They're fantastic. Undertale has been out for 10 years. That's like a decade. I don't think I'll ever be able to fully express how much of an effect this game has had on my personality. It very well might have been the game to get me into narrative analysis, like in general. Like I was so desperate to figure out what the funny skeleton man's deal was, I accidentally developed a whole new personality trait, and that's going well strong to this very day. Not to mention the profound effects it had on things like my humor and a musical taste, both of which are still properly broken to this very day. I'm also fairly sure Undertale introduced me to concepts like pacifism, alternate universes, and lesbians. Needless to say, I'm a pretty big fan. It's funny because it's been such a long time. I first played Undertale back in middle school, so a lot of the reasons I like Undertale have almost completely shifted since then. Again, I've gotten older, so I've learned to appreciate things like Alphys's character arc and Mettaton's queer subtext. Meanwhile, a decade ago, I don't even know if I fully understood why I liked Undertale so much, just that I wanted to consume as much about it as I did. I would watch all the Let's Plays, consume as much fan content as I could, whether that was fan art, fan comics. My old Google Plus account was Underfell Sans, which is just wild to think about nowadays. Originally, this video was going to be strictly about fan stuff, like Sans and the ever so slightly incestuous Christmas Party webcomic. This video really could have been a, hey y'all, remember insert Undertale fan project here on repeat for about 45 minutes, and it'd be a very fun video. To the point where I'll feel confident betting on someone else doing basically exactly that, and frankly, I can't wait to watch. For me personally, I remember those old Undertale try not to laugh challenges, which would either take silly fan comics or just put Undertale faces over characters in a vine, like a way more complicated version of saying, wow, that kid who says 9 plus 10 is 21 has some real papyrus energy. I wasn't very adventurous on the internet back then, thank God, so this was really the main way I watched Vines. I also never went onto Tumblr. I only made an account for the first time like 2 or 3 years ago, and that was mainly to look at Narumitsu fan art. So when I think back to fan comics, it's nearly entirely through the lens of YouTube fan dubs, to the point where I think it took a while to click that the actual comics weren't made for the video to be dubbed over. Like, I remember being especially confused on the Ask Frisk and Company series, because I thought it was a weird device for a project to pretend like the characters were being asked questions, because I just didn't realize what an Ask series was. So how many of you have also had that sort of moment where you were like, no, I'm mature now. I don't watch silly things like Ask Frisk and Company. I only watch serious things like Glitch Tale. Mind you, I was probably actively listening to an Undertale parody of a Steven Universe song when I made that choice, so my sense of maturity was a little bit off. Even still, it's not necessarily a surprise that I eventually waned off the Undertale fan stuff. So much of it was so creative and joyful and interesting in their own right, but it rarely ever captured what I personally liked about Undertale, which is fair. There's nothing quite like Undertale. The closest any fan media has gone that I've seen is probably Undertale Yellow, but that's its own beast in a lot of ways. Then of course, the video turned into this, with a script I can only describe as an Undertale-themed journal entry with a heavy focus on nostalgia, the passing of time, and what is, in my personal opinion, the coolest song title in any video game ever. Because when I think about why I love Undertale, I mean, of course, there's so many moments you can analyze to death and back, to the point where Undertale can sometimes feel less like an actual narrative and more like a Sans and/or Gaster themed puzzle box. And that is fun. I got quite a lot of hours out of wondering what Gaster's deal was. I mean, shoot, I still regularly wonder about Gaster. Of course, there's more to it than the Easter eggs. I think Papyrus is one of the funniest characters in video games, and every major character I feel like I can relate to on at least some level, whether it's Asgore's stubbornness or Toriel and Alphys's refusal to deal with their problems. I think the fact fact that there's this secret evil route that's primarily there to be intentionally unsatisfying is fascinating. But what I really love more than anything else is when you're at the end of the pacifist route and you take a walk all the way back to the start of the game. You've just seen nearly everyone you've met across the entire journey, and so many of them have had their lives improved because of you. Because you decided to be kind, the world is a little bit closer to being better. Then you get to Azrael. Didn't know he'd be there. You suspected something would be there, but either way, you talk to him. And he's hesitant at first. He's dying, in a sense. And it takes him a second to embrace the idea of having a bit of comfort in this moment. But still, you talk with him. He asks why the main character, Frisk, climbed Mount Ebott. He starts to posit the idea that since everyone who climbed Mount Ebott disappeared, that Frisk climbed the mountain in order to disappear, just like his friend did so many years ago. I know there's no proper way to figure out why Frisk climbed the mountain. They never say, and in a way, it doesn't matter, because here they are, having done an incredibly kind thing for so many, and now they're having this one last conversation with Azrael, the last act of kindness he will ever feel. There's no reason to talk to Azrael. It doesn't progress the game. It doesn't add that much to the story. If you beat the game without seeing it, you wouldn't be impacted in any major way, and yet it has so much emotional power behind it. And I think that says something too. Kindness and pacifism isn't the only answer for how to beat Undertale, nor is it the only answer for how to live life, but it is always an option, and to embrace that option, to adore that option, it gives me hope that there's some type of truth out there, that no matter how bad things get, no matter how broken you are physically or mentally, you can always help people just because it's kind. Because in this life, kindness can't fix the world, but occasionally it can heal it, even if it's just ever so slightly. And it's that awe-inspiring power that gets me so pumped. It's the very thing that makes me think about this weird game from a decade ago. I think that's the real reason I have always loved Undertale. It creates these characters I so desperately want to see kindness departed onto, and seeing that kindness makes me want to be kind out in the real world. It gives this idea that no matter what situation I'm in, I can always at least try and do something good. Of course, Undertale hasn't exactly turned me into a saint. I've fucked up a lot in these past 10 years, and I'm willing to bet I'll mess up a lot more. But maybe, as long as I keep getting back up to right my wrongs or help someone else out, maybe I'll live a life worth living. In retrospect, Undertale introduced me to music and comedy gold, made me love the characters to the point where I'd even consume weird fan content just to get a little bit more of them, and it made me want to be a better person. For so many other series, this would be the magnum opus, the shining star unlike any other. For the Undertale franchise though, it was just the prologue. Deltarune is my favorite game, full stop. To the point where I'll probably get the actual Deltarune tattooed on my body at some point. I know that's weird to say about a game where only half of it is out, and in a sense that's part of why I love it. That extra bit of intrigue as to what could possibly happen in the end. Even still, if chapters 5 through 7 end up sucking total ass, which I don't really believe is what's gonna happen, Toby Fox and the Deltarune team have built so much good credit that whatever's going to happen in the next chapters, I'm fully willing to believe it might actually be my favorite shit ever. I had an inclination this would happen ever since chapter 2 released, which I adored, but with chapter 3 and especially chapter 4, every character, every area, every musical goddamn motif, it's all filled with so much intrigue and love and care, and so much to be utterly fascinated by that I could teach a college class on every interesting thing about Deltarune for a whole semester, and I'd still have enough left to do a Deltarune 102 class, and I don't even think I'm hyperbolizing. Just take the last boss fight of chapter 4, the Titan. Its face thing both resembles a biblically accurate angel, a save point, motherfucking Gaster, and the way to defeat it was predicted by Jockington, which I still don't fully know what's going on with them. And again, it's not just the cool lore stuff. I love the cool lore stuff, but there's also the emotional aspects. The Titan Titan doesn't have any emotions, but the way Susie and especially Rouse react to it is so interesting. Rouse having been this character that is always promoting pacifism, who just immediately after seeing the Titan goes, "Oh, we gotta kill this thing now," is so fun. Epic battles are, of course, nothing new for video games, but this being the first real big one of Deltarune, it feels really earned. And of course, the old man coming in the end to help turn the tides of battle, which really puts a cap on Susie's narrative arc for the chapter, and then on defeating the Titan, she sees Chris's soul for the first time, which is of course the thing the player is using to puppet them. So where that plotline is going to be very, very interesting, and that's just the spark notes. There's so much detail into every little bit of this game, and I just love soaking it all up like I'm a Delta sponge. It also, of course, has my favorite song title in any video game ever. Not necessarily my favorite song in any video game ever, though interestingly, Third Sanctuary is almost definitely somewhere in my top 10. My favorite song title in any video game ever is The Place Where It Rained. This is because, as many of you probably already know, 10 years ago, back when Undertale first released, there's a pivotal scene where the song It's Raining Somewhere Else plays. It's an absolutely beautiful song. I might even be playing it right now, assuming Materia doesn't get my ass. It's funny because there was always a crowd of people speculating about what the title means. After all, it's a Sans song. He has a weird machine and says there's somewhere he wants to go back to that isn't the surface. And obviously, all the answers as to what's up with Sans haven't been answered yet, or might not ever get answered. Again, the game isn't finished yet. I should clarify, this isn't like a nostalgia thing, or even the puzzle box thing. As for nostalgia, in all honesty, I don't know if I've left Undertale alone long enough to feel that much nostalgia. I mean, there's some, obviously, but like when I heard The Place Where It Rained for the first time, it didn't bring me back 10 years, it brought me back to last Tuesday. And the puzzle box aspect is cool. I, hypocritically enough, do feel some nostalgia for when I used to be in class and just zoned out because I was wondering where Sans could possibly want to go back to, wondering where exactly did it rain. So to get here and not only be treated with the probable answer of a decade-long mystery I was never sure would be answered, but since the answer also enhances the scene of It's Raining Somewhere Else. When Sans talks to Frisk about Toriel, she wasn't just some nice lady he talked to with a door between them. She was someone from a different reality that he used to care about. She was so close to being the person he used to spend time with, the shadow of someone he probably loved in some form or another, just sitting on the other side of the door telling knock-knock jokes, without even a clue as to who he was or what they used to be. That's an insane amount of storytelling that just happened through one callback in one song title. So that's partly why it's so great. It's also great because being tied to this pivotal game in my life from 10 years ago, it makes me think about what's happened since then. It's been a long 10 years. I've only done a little over 2 decades of life. I'm not used to looking back a whole decade about thinking where things were, about thinking where things are going to be. I'm going to hard pivot now, but we'll get back to this line of thought, don't worry. In chapter 3, towards the end, Susie has this talk with Tenna. It's the one where she encourages him about his sense of loneliness by talking about her own past. And it is specifically the lines, "Don't worry, dude, someone out there wants you, promise," where I had the distinct sense that if I heard the line, even just a few years earlier, that line would have just pissed me off. See, throughout a good lot of the decade between now and Undertale, I didn't really have anyone in my life I would call a friend. I wasn't totally alone, but most days that didn't matter. Plenty of things I could blame that on, namely the whole global pandemic right smack in the middle of the timeline, but none of that matters now, because the reasons fade, but the memory of that crushing sense of loneliness, this constant idea that what connections I did have were destined to not only to end, but to end badly. bitterly. That's not something easy to forget. To have someone else tell a story that I could so easily make parallels to my own, only for them to say that there's someone out there who would want to care about me, it was ridiculous. Who would want to be friends with me? Of course, the idea would have just pissed me off, which makes me all the fonder of the fact that the line didn't piss me off, because now I have friends, real friends I want to keep. It's been a hard decade, but I made it to the place where it rains, and things aren't perfect. And in a lot of ways, things are actually pretty shitty right now. But there's still hope, there's still kindness, there's still friendship, there's still rain. I don't know what the future chapters of Deltarune hold, and I am especially clueless as to what the future of the real world holds, but there's good people in this world. I'm lucky enough to have met some of them. I'm even luckier to want to be one of them, because I think that's where Deltarune shines in a way that Undertale, at least for me, didn't. Undertale made me enthralled with the idea of pacifism and kindness, but Deltarune, seeing Chris, Rousey, and especially Susie over these past years, really made me want to break out of my shell and finally work on being as kind as Undertale had shown me that I always could be. Undertale being 10 years old is really something. I'm so thankful that it was made, that it led to all this, that it helped lead me to this desire to not only create, but to create with kindness, that it led to Deltarune, which is just the coolest shit ever, to all the fan projects that helped ease the pain of waiting to see whatever Toby Fox makes next, and mostly I'm thankful that it etched just this little extra bit of hope on my heart. I don't know what it'll be like the next time it rains. The idea excites me. The idea scares me. But hey, maybe I can have hope crossed on my heart too. It won't fix anything, but if I try, if I create, if I really listen to that inner voice I got from 10 years ago, if I maintain the bonds I've made with people I love, maybe I can face the next rainfall with love, hope, and with determination.